everyone. Welcome to Chemistry with Miss Bennett. Today's video, we are going to talk about something called significant figures, or we sometimes abbreviate them as Sig Figs. You will also hear them called significant digits. It's the same thing. So significant figures and significant digits are the same thing. Okay, now another way you'll see me abbreviate Sig Figs is just by writing SF for Sig Figs, just so you know. Okay, so first things first, I typically ask students in my classroom, what does the word significant mean to you? And the most common popular answer that I get from students is that it means that something that is important, like a significant other is someone that is important to you. So a significant figure means it's a number that is significant. And that would be a true statement. So then the next thing that I do is I would write on the board something like this. And then I ask the kids, I ask my students, I say, well, if I told you that these numbers are not the same in terms of their significance, and even though they all have a value of 1,000, that's still true for all three of them, but they're not equally significant. And I ask students to rank them. Who is the most significant? 1, 2, or 3. So we'll number them. Number 1, number 2, number 3. And which number would be the least significant? Then typically most students will tell me that number 3 is the most significant, and number 1 is the least significant. And you are correct. Check, check. So good. So if that makes sense to you, and you maybe not understand why, but you can tell by looking at it that number 3 just looks, excuse me, a little bit more important. I'm not quite sure. It's got a decimal point. It's got some zeros past the decimal point. And so what we're going to talk about today is how to find out exactly how many of the digits are significant. So when we're talking about digits, like we have these numbers that are written here, this entire number is 1,000. But this is a digit, and this is a digit, and this is a digit, and this is a digit. So it has 4 digits written. They're not all significant though. Some digits are significant and some are not. So let's talk about the 10 possible digits you could be. You could be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Those are the 10 possible digits. Now the easy thing is, check this out. If your number is 1, there we go. If your number is 1 through 9, then you are automatically significant. Right off the bat. So if I had a number like 315, 315, there's a 3, a 1, and a 5. Those are my 3 digits. So all 3 are significant. So that has 3 Sig Figs. If I had the number 7,364, I was going to say 315. I got that number stuck in my head. So this number, 7,364, all 4 of the digits are some between 1 and 9. So that means all 4 are significant. So there are 4 Sig Figs. So that's easy, right? Now the problem comes in with this darn 0. 0 causes problems. So there are rules. Textbooks have rules, rules online, so on and so forth. And they give you some rules to figure out if 0 is significant, because guess what? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. So sometimes it is significant and sometimes it's not. And that can be frustrating. The rules typically that are in the textbook, or excuse me, that you find online, I don't particularly care for. I feel like they're not, they can be very confusing. They're not student friendly. So let me teach you a quick student friendly way to determine how many sig figs your numbers has. It's not going to break down like specifically zeros. It's going to look at a number holistically, so it'll include the 1 through 9 digits as well as the 0. But when you're trying to go really quick, trying to answer a question of how many sig figs does something have, then there are some simple steps and rules. So let me go through them with you really quick. All right, so here it is. Basically, the first thing you need to be able to do is ask yourself a question. And the question is this: does the number, oops, wrong letter, there we go. Does the number have a written decimal point? Now, I've added this word because lots of times we know whether or not we write a decimal point or not. We know where the decimal point is, so technically all numbers have them. They just might not be written. So determining whether or not a number has a written decimal point, that's going to be the key to how you determine how many sig figs you have. Okay, so your answers are going to be yes, or your answers are going to be no. So if you say yes, then that means you may have one of the numbers at the top that looks like this, has a decimal point, or this one. Or if you said no, then your number may be like this one. So, does the number have a decimal point that is written out for the number ? Okay, so if you said yes, then the rules are these. Step number 1. We're going to draw we're going to use a math word, array. I used to call it an arrow. Arrows got confusing for some kids, so now I call it array. So from just quick review from geometry, I don't know if you learn it in algebra, but pretty sure it's in geometry. Array is a line that has a starting point, and then it goes on to infinity. Okay, so that's what a ray is by definition. So we're going to draw a ray. If we have a decimal point, we're going to draw the ray from left to right. And for an array that goes from left to right, looks kind of like this. So it starts on the left and it goes to the right. And also, you can add this little tail to the top of it, which I'll show you why that might be beneficial to you in just a second. And when you do that, it almost looks like there's a right here. Looks like the shape of letter L. So that's the left. It goes from left to right. All right, so you draw an arrow from left to right. But the question is, when do you start drawing this arrow? You will draw, or you'll start drawing, at the first. I did not spell that right. Try that again. At the first non-zero number. Now remember, a non-zero number is a digit between 1 and 9. And also recall that this is a ray, which means it has a starting point and it goes on to infinity. So it's just going to keep going and going and going. Nothing else stops it. Commas don't stop it. The decimal point doesn't stop it. Nothing stops it. The only thing the decimal point, if it's written, tells you what to do is to start on the left-hand side. The left-hand side of your number, you're going to work from left to right. You'll start drawing your ray the minute you see a number that's between 1 and 9. And then all digits past this point. Goodness, I'm having trouble writing today. Past this point are significant. All right, so I will give you, we'll do the two that I wrote up at the top. I'll bring them down here at the bottom, and then I'll give a couple more examples. All right, so example 1, we had this number. Okay, I've identified as yes, it has a decimal point that is written in the number. So I'm going to draw a ray, and I am going to start on the left-hand side of my number. So when I get over on the left-hand side, which is way over here somewhere, I'm over here on the left, I'm going to approach my number from left to right So as I'm going in this general direction, the first digit I encounter is a 1. Oh, I erased it. There we go. The first digit I encounter is a 1. Now that 1 is a non-zero number. It's a number between 1 and 9. So I stop, I immediately draw my ray and go this way. Now, like I said, sometimes kids like to do this little tail thing at the top and they block it off. If the first number is between 1 and 9, it's not that difficult to visualize what's going on with the arrow, but you'll see in just a minute, sometimes those numbers can be in the middle, and so it's easier for kids to count. It's totally up to you. All right, so when I block this off with this arrow or this ray, then I count 1, 2, 3, 4. This number has 4 sig figs. All right, let's try another one. Example 2, 1,000, decimal point 0, 0. All right, let's count this one. Get on, I have noticed that I have a decimal point. That means I start on the left-hand side of the number. So I get on the left. The very first digit is a 1, which is a non-zero number. Block it off and go. You count. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 digits. Notice this decimal point had nothing to do with the ray. It keeps going right past it because all that decimal point does is tell me to start on the left-hand side. So that's the part that you have to memorize. All right, so now let's try some number that's a little bit different. Let's try a number like this one, 0.00020100. Well, clearly it has a decimal point that's written, so that means I'm going to start on the left-hand side. But when I start on the left-hand side, this first one is a 0. It does not count because we're going to start drawing at our first non-zero number. This is a 0, doesn't count. 0 doesn't count. 0 doesn't count. The next number is a 2. That is a non-zero number. So you block it off. This is why some kids block it because it's easier just to visualize it. And draw your ray. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 sig figs. Now take note, these zeros are not significant. They are not significant at all. They do not count as being significant zeros. However, this 0 and these 2 zeros are significant. So there are some rules. Like I said, there's a set of rules to figure that out. I just feel most kids struggle with those rules, and I struggled with them when I was a chemistry student. And so this is a different way that's a little bit more student friendly when you need to know those sig figs quickly. Now, the part of drawing the arrow or the ray, I would say don't use it as a crutch. Use it at the beginning when you're first learning how to do it. And then after a while, when you start seeing numbers, I expect you to be able to tell me how many sig figs it is just by looking at it. So if you had something like this, then you have a decimal point. You look at this and you automatically know that there are 9 sig figs. But there is a decimal point right there. That means we start on the left-hand side of the number, which is over here. And the very first digit is a 1, so you just block it off. Everything counts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But you don't want to have to always draw the arrow. You want to be a little bit faster. Now, the non-zero, if we said no, because we have a number that does not have a decimal point, then guess what? It's very, very, very simple. The rules are exactly the same. There's only one tiny difference, and the difference is step number 2. Instead of starting on the left and going to the right, we're going to draw our arrow from right to left. So 1 is the same, 3 is the same, and 4 is the same. Same rules. So we're just going to start on the different side of the number. That's it. All right, so for our example that we have up here at the top, 1,000 without a decimal place, or decimal point, sorry. So we do know it does have a decimal spot, but it's just not written. Then we're going to start on the right-hand side of the number. So this is the right. And we are going to go from right to left. So the first digit I encounter is a 0. Okay, that is not between 1 and 9. The second one is a 0, not between 1 and 9. The third one is a 0, not between 1 and 9. This very last digit, that one right there, that 1 is the only significant digit. So this one has 1 sig fig. Practice a few more. Example 2, I could have a number like this. Okay, so it's like 3,010,000. No decimal point. So when there's no decimal point, I start on the right-hand side and I go from right to the left. This first 4 digits I encounter are 0. So the first time I encounter a number that's not 0 is the 1. So I mark it off, draw my ray from right to left, and then I count my digits. There are 3 sig figs. Okay, so that's how I teach determining number of sig figs in a number. So stay tuned, because after this, what will be happening is I will be making a video on how to use sig figs with math, add, subtract, multiply, divide. But this is just simply determining the number of sig figs. All right, thanks.